right, hello wine drinking people. Today is Saturday, August 28th, finishing up another great week here at the Wine Watch. Had our vintage Australian tasting last night. 8, 9, 10, I don't know how many wines we had, but they were all great. Everything showed up, and that's always good at a tasting when you're featuring older wines, because as wines age, some of them go bad. Well, they definitely have more bottle variants anyways as they get older. And we're talking, most of the stuff was in the 10-year-old range. And we've got a lot of vintage Australian wines in the store. I've been to Australia twice. The first time with Mr. Dan Phillips. And the rumor has been confirmed. His R wines in receivership in Australia. A lot of angry growers worried about getting paid. Dan's not a bad guy. You know, Dan was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And high-end Australia, as I've mentioned before on this show, is in the toilet. And many of these wines, these great wines, because in Australia they make some of the best wines in the world. And contrary to some of the critics that have said these wines do not age, we have done, I don't know how many tastings now in the store with our vintage Australian wines that we've kept here in South Florida in our cellar at the Wine Watch. And these wines are drinking fantastic. And we've got a stash of some of Australia's greatest. And a lot of these wines are approaching 10 years old or older. They're drinking at their peak, in their peak years of drinking right now. And you know what? You can pay just about the same price or less as what many of these wines were selling at the current release price. I think a lot of these products are now being discounted very heavily. As I mentioned, the high end of Australia is in deep trouble. One of the leaders of Australian imports, Dan Phillips, in receivership for his own winery. Even though I don't think it's over for Dan yet. He may be on the ropes, but I don't think he's out for the count yet. His Grateful Palates company's still open for business. He's still got wines at the distributor. And like I said, we've just got to find the right point at where these wines are going to start selling again. But there is no question, there's no doubt in my mind that the Aussies producing some of the greatest wines made in the world. We've got wines like the Dead Arm Shiraz from McLaren Vale on here. We've got some Elderton Command Shiraz. That was the wine of the night last night, the 1998. I know we've got some 01 on the shelf, and I know we may have a bottle or two of some other stuff kicking around from Elderton. We've got Burge Family Vineyards. A lot of these producers are small family producers, and as I mentioned before, some of the greatest wines made in Australia. A lot of these wines were brought in through Dan Phillips. And I've been to Australia the second time. I went by myself and visited some other people from Epicurean. There's a number of small import companies that just focus on Australia. And we've got, like I said, a treasure trove of vintage Australian Shiraz and some Cabernet Sauvignon. They also do some pretty good Cabernet Sauvignon in Australia. Check it out on today's offer. I'm your host, Andrew Lampazone, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.